For further discussion on the Texas primaries, joining us now is Mike Leon, lead anchor of the Legal Podcast Network and host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. And we have Tony Kinnett, national correspondent for the Daily Signal and host of the Tony Kinnett Cast radio show and podcast. So first of all, good afternoon to you both. Tony, I'll start with you this week. Can you just give us your thoughts, your opinions on the Republican candidates?
Well, I think so far I'm a little bit unhappy to see Ken Paxton leading. I would really rather have Wesley Hunt in Texas. I think he's far more put together as a representative. He has a very excellent record. I think he's much more well-spoken as well as driven on issues culturally and economically than perhaps Cornyn is. Ken Paxton has more baggage than a cheap taxi outside LaGuardia. So I'm not entirely sure what exactly that's going to do for Republicans. In North Carolina, it's a bit more of a toss-up, and I'm going to hold my tongue, although there are a couple of candidates there that don't embarrass Republicans. And that's really the goal for 2026 midterms. You don't want to nominate a Carrie Lake, who's a bag of, crazy peanuts. You also don't want to nominate an ancient person of the establishment class who's seen as out of touch. So it's a very small eye hole of the needle to thread here for Republicans.
All right, Mike, let me go to you now. What do you think about the players on the Democratic side?
Yeah, good to see you guys as first. I can't believe Tony set that low bar of don't be crazy as a bag of peanuts. It shouldn't be that hard of a hurdle to clear, you would think. On the Democratic side, you would think. On the Democratic side, Don, I've had Jasmine Crockett on my show a few times. I've known her camp pretty well over the last couple of years. And Tallarico obviously has not really in state politics, has not really come out of the woodwork, but he's really obviously grown to prominence. And he's done some things that, I echoed in the 24 campaign cycle that Trump did in terms of going to some of these non-traditional places to get your message out, right? He did an episode of Surrounded where he spoke to 20 voters that were potentially maybe going to vote for him, maybe going to vote for somebody else. And that got hundreds of thousands of views. He did other, interviews on Joe Rogan's show and things like that to get his message out there. And he's seen more as a moderate Democrat, whereas Jasmine Crockett has more of the viral moments. But I think a lot of people don't know Jasmine Crockett's background as an attorney. They just see her and some of the exchanges she's had with MTG, but they don't really know how she's won her district, how she was endorsed previously by some of the big leaders out in the state of Texas before her district obviously got a little gerrymandered there. So there are some things that I think a lot of people don't know about Jasmine Crockett that they're going to potentially find out over these. Well, they've been finding out since early voting started. And now that they're finding out today at the ballot box, that I think either candidate will make a good choice for the Democratic side. It'll definitely clear Tony's low bar of don't be crazy like a bag of peanuts. And I think Tallarico will for sure give a little bit more of that moderate feel to the people that are a little bit upset with the direction of the country, tariffs impact, the economy, things like that could potentially in a general vote for a Democrat for the first time. I don't see it, but there are more registered Democrats in the state of Texas than there are Republicans.
I'm just reading Tony's expression there. I don't know if he feels so sure about what you just said, Mike. So, Tony, then let me ask you, what do you think about the chances a Democrat could flip a Senate seat in Texas?
So the question here is who are the Democrats going to put up against Ken Paxton? And unfortunately, Jasmine Crockett, whose legislative record is atrocious, who participates in a brand new Ebonic accent every week that's disgraceful and disgusting. As I talked to one producer who said had worked on the Tyler Perry things, we wouldn't even use a caricature of her because of how gross and just out of place that would be to individuals. She's a despicable individual who, again, blamed white supremacy on the disgusting terror attack of the pro-Iranian terror attack in Texas. Just despicable. Tallarico, I would push back a little bit slightly on the suggestion that he's moderate and suggesting he'd fight against Republicans. In that clip that was played, he's very pro kind of the young progressive route of getting rid of the Democrats who understand maybe shutting the government down isn't useful. He's running as a very far progressive, and he's doing it with the Pete Buttigieg kind of bat. I don't know if either of those have the tool to take down Ken Paxton. Now, again, I don't believe that running a Beto O'Rourke campaign for the 8th time in a row is going to be effective. Maybe Ken Paxton is a weak enough candidate to do it. I don't know. Texans don't really care for the school marmy progressive crazy, and that's really what both of those candidates offer. I think that Roy Cooper's got a better shot in the North Carolina Senate race, for example, because at least he knows how not to get out there and, well, not trip on that low bar of not being insane.
So, Mike, Democrats haven't won a Senate election in Texas in almost 40 years. Is this year the year?
No. I mean, you get what you vote for, Don. You know, like it's real simple. Like there are more registered Democrats in the state, like I mentioned before, but folks in the state, for some reason, want to continue the same Ted Cruz hopping on a plane when things get a little rough in the state of Texas type of politician. Ken Paxton, like Tony mentioned he's got more baggage. I'm about to go to LaGuardia in a week or so. He has way more baggage than I pack for. If you can't beat a Ken Paxton in this type of election, to Tony's point, you're never going to beat one, because Ken Paxton has his own issues with respect to some of the things that he's done, not only as AG, but some of the things in his own personal life that I won't even talk about here. Right. I don't want to necessarily push back, because I don't want to defend Jasmine Crockett or anything like that. I think there is such a thing as code switching when you're talking to one audience versus talking to somebody else. The Tallarico stuff, James Tallarico would tell you he is not a progressive. So I don't know if he would characterize that, or anybody from his campaign, or even people that have worked with him in the state legislature would characterize him as that. I think he's trying to run more as almost a center left type of person that could potentially unify the understanding in the state of Texas of, like, we do have a Second Amendment. You do have to have, access to your gun. But also, like, we've had failures from law enforcement in Uvalde. We've had failures from mass shootings that have happened in Texas all throughout the different times under AG Ken Paxton, under John Cornyn, all of these different things. I want to try something different. So I want to balance that line of your Second Amendment rights not being infringed upon by also countering that we should have red flag laws on the books in the state of Texas. Like, so I think there are some people out there, and maybe I have no friggin' idea, Tony, to be honest, and Don, to be honest with you, because they haven't won since '94. So you asked me a question, but the math doesn't math. So we haven't seen a Democrat flip it. And if you can't flip it against a Ken Paxton, it's never going to happen.
So, Tony, can I ask you about what indicators you're looking at? What is the margin that the GOP side that the candidate needs to win by to make you as comfortable as you can about Republicans maintaining the Senate seat? Any other indicators you're looking at?
Oh, I mean, the main indicators, I think, less on a margin here is what's said after the campaign, between now and between the end of the campaign season. I mean, Beto O'Rourke tried to get out there and do, again, kind of a flamboyant campaign. Colin Allred tried the exact same style. It didn't work. The kind of more been in the Senate style of Cruz and Cornyn, where they shrug off attacks. Ken Paxton's more reactive. So no one snatches defeat from the jaws of victory quite like Republicans in major elections. So again, as Mike alluded to in his personal life, things that I find particularly abhorrent. Again, why I would have much preferred seeing Wesley Hunt at the particular top of this ballot. That's not going to happen. This is something that I think I can't be as comfortable here. Perhaps maybe in the same way that I might say in California, there are some elections I'd really like to see some Republicans win, and they're just not gonna, because that's just how things are done in California as opposed to Texas. And it's the math not mathing in a case, because people believe rotely here that for example, Mike brought up the things that Tallarico believes that might be more appropriate for a moderate Texan Democrat to believe, but he's not running for a state office. Like, he's not going toe to toe with Abbott. He's running for the Senate to impose a national will from the Texans' perspective, which is a bit of a mismatch despite Tallarico. And that's what he draws. But Mike's absolutely correct. That is what he portrays to Texans. So there's a little mismatch. It's, why are you running for that position? Why now? Why move from the state legislature and then jumping all the way to the Senate? You got to rally people to come out in the midterm year. And this is just, I don't know, political oatmeal drudgery. I don't know if there's a better way to say that. I certainly can't come up with one.
So, Mike, you said earlier you don't believe that Democrats could win this Texas midterm Senate election. So why do you think there's a narrative that Democrats have a shot here? What do you think is the biggest reason Democrats say they can flip this seat in Texas? Is it the polling numbers? We're seeing reports of Democratic early voting outpacing previous elections. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I mean, well, first off, the math is mathing. I just mentioned there's more registered Democrats in the state of Texas. What happens is that a lot of these people don't turn out, right? Like it just happens. If you look back at the margins that Beto lost year over year, or 2 year over 2 years, excuse me, like when the analysts overanalyze those races and they see the margins decrease, the first instinct is we got to turn more people out. Yeah, that's great to turn more people out, but you also have to have a candidate that kind of lines up, to Tony's point, with like the directives of the state holistically, right? So I think the one thing I will say about the Senate seat, and you were asking Tony about factors, the biggest factors that I'm looking for with respect to if they could win is really what's happening right now. I mean, don't take my words for it. Matt Walsh is on Twitter saying that we shouldn't be invading Iran and we shouldn't be, doing regime change, which the president ran against. Tariffs, and the Supreme Court just weighed in on tariffs. And I mentioned to you that Federal Economic Bank Reserve New York a study in February of 26 found that Americans are paying on average $1,000 to $1,300 more because of the impact of tariffs. So it's the economy. Now I'm putting troops in harm's way. The president has classified this as a war. We don't know what's going to happen over these next 6, 7, 8 months. But if we were taking a snapshot in time right now, which is what polling is, everyone would be on board of saying, like, President Trump campaigned on no new wars, and he started one, according to his own words, and the economy is not getting better, and tariffs are impacting American households. This guy's running for, again, Senate at the national level. Those are things to champion. What I'm going to do differently from predecessors that have had this seat, that have been, intertwined with Republican politics. Do you want something different than that, Texans? Come out and vote for me. I think Tallarico offers a little bit more of, I guess, the old Joe Biden of like the negotiation, let's meet in the middle type of politician. Crockett is kind of seen sometime to Texans as, she's just way out there. And I've only seen her viral clips, and she's on every other news program that, starts with an M, an S, or a C, or an N. And I think that's the thing. Like, they don't know as much about Tallarico, right, but when they see him, they know he's steeped in local politics. And so right, this could be somebody that could appease to them. So I think it's a mixture of things. But back to what you were asking, Tony, Don, I think the factors really have to play out of what's happening at the national perspective.
Right. Okay, I wish we had more time, Tony. Mike, to explore what you said, but we have to leave it there for today. Thank you both for speaking with us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.